It's June 25th. I'm Paul Joseph Watson. Welcome to INFOWARS Nightly News.
Tonight on the INFOWARS Nightly News, Paul Joseph Watson speaks with Douglas J. Hagman, founder of the Northeast Intelligence Network, about Fast and Furious and GoDaddy's censorship of Obama's truth spots. Plus, white skies coming to a horizon near you, courtesy of the globalist agenda. And we announced the Phase 1 winner of the Obama poster contest. All that and more on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Top story tonight, DHS cell phone alert system follows you around. Not only does the Department of Homeland Security's new emergency alert system force cell phone users to receive text messages directly from our dear leader, President Obama, it also, quote, follows the user wherever they go, according to newly released details of the program. Now, if you weren't aware of this, we've been covering it for years virtually. All new cell phones in the US are required by the federal government to have a special chip in them which basically allows the feds to send you text messages which automatically pop up on your phone. Now, if you haven't got a new phone, don't worry, because the older phones are receiving operating system upgrades. You saw the big brouhaha last week about Apple iOS 6, and it's all part of the same system. Everything's going to be upgraded to receive these presidential emergency alerts. And by the way, you can't opt out of them. They're mandatory. At least the ones directly from Barack Obama are mandatory. And so we've also learned today with this news story that the messages are also going to be delivered with their own special ringtone and vibration. So the sheeple are going to be made to feel very special when they receive their informative message from our dear leader. But until now, we didn't know about this little added extra bombshell that's come out today. According to Todd Krause, the weather warning coordinator at the National Weather Service's Chanhassen office, the WEA alert system tracks cell phone users wherever they go in order to deliver region-specific warnings. Quote, what the system does is actually follow you around wherever you are going, based on users' proximity to cellular towers, Krause told TwinCities.com. So basically, Big Sis needs to know exactly where you are at all times in order to send these fear-mongering messages, which I call them that because in the only major test of them that they've done so far, in New Jersey, it created nothing but panic, confusion, anxious, terror-filled 9/11 calls because the message basically said, you know, shelter in place. This is a government announcement. It completely went over the top. Everybody freaked out. Again, achieving the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do, which is calm people down in an emergency. So seeing as anyone who's, you know, publicly active now has a cell phone, they carry it around with them at all times. And with the admission now that the DHS is not only going to send people, bombard them with messages that you can't opt out of, they're going to now track you everywhere you go via the same system. It's almost as anathema to privacy as if you had a microchip embedded in your forehead. And again, mandatory, you can't opt out. It pops up, Barack Obama's smiling face on your phone, delivering the latest fear-mongering alert. And it's all about the fact, as we've documented, they're building this infrastructure of informational control through this emergency alert system. You've already seen, in terms of the media and broadcasting platform, they can override and hijack anything they want so long as it's in the name of a civil emergency. And that's eventually going to be tied into the surveillance camera, IntelliStreets, light hubs that are being rolled out in major cities across the US. So this meshed network of surveillance is ultimately also planned to be designed to be a big brother announcement grid where they just bark orders at you as you're passing by the streetlight, also linked in with these emergency alerts. So now they admit they can track you, they can follow you around all through Big Sis. More police state news. Media promotes troops on streets to cut down on crime. Following reports last week that the US Army had wheeled tanks rolling down residential streets and highways in St. Louis as part of a training program, local news media channels featured interviews with residents who praised the sight of troops on the streets as a valuable crime-fighting tool, similar to that used in foreign countries. Now, you're not going to believe the two idiots, literal morons, that the news media found for these interviews. And make no mistake about it, you know, they probably talked to half a dozen, 10 people. And they deliberately picked these two morons who talk about how great it would be to see foreign troops on the streets of America, just like in countries overseas. It's such a boon for freedom. So let's go to the clip.
People who live and work in this neighborhood say they think the training here is a good idea.
I think it's the same way when you go out to other countries, when you go out of town, they don't have police officers, they have troops. And I think it kind of scares a lot of people.
Might cut down on crime?
Crime, yeah, cut down on a whole lot of crime, because they don't know if they're military or they're police.
I think it's fantastic because this might slow down some of the crime rate. You know, the crime rate might go down. You know, that's what I think of.
So they've gone out and found these two morons, you know, openly calling for the US to be turned into some kind of banana republic, despotic state where the military conducts law enforcement to scare the people like it's a good thing. And the local media, they don't pick a cross-section of opinions. They pick these two idiots who are openly calling for a military dictatorship. And that becomes the whole editorial tone of the story. Because, you know, it works so well in foreign countries where the military is the police. You know, the former Soviet Union, that was a walk in the park. That was so much fun. You know, North Korea does it. I guess it's great. Posse Comitatus, Declaration of Independence, both say that troops involved in law enforcement is illegal, but this Fox News channel openly advocates it through these idiotic vox pop interviews, which you just saw. And remember also when the troops invaded South Florida a few weeks ago for this unannounced raid on a building in the middle of the night. You know, explosions, gunfire, nobody was informed of it. And how did the media characterize it afterwards? You know, was it a disturbing martial law pretext? Was it even just a mere inconvenience to the people being terrified, woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of explosions? No. This local media news channel called it a cool tourist story. That's what they called it. So it sounds ridiculous, but it makes perfect sense when you know that this is about an acclimation process. It's part of the transitioning agenda for the US Army to be deployed domestically, as we've documented, is outlined in the Chief of Staff of the US Army, General Raymond T. O'Durnio, who in a recent Foreign Affairs piece, which of course is the publication of the Council on Foreign Relations, said that that was the plan, that the Army is going to be transmissioned into domestic law enforcement. So the fact that the media is out saying either it's cool or it's perfectly normal, or worse yet, that America should somehow aspire to foreign countries that have troops patrol the streets instead of cops, like these two idiots they found on the street called for, then you know that it's all part of the acclimation process. Another example of why the mainstream media is losing its readership and viewership at a rapid level. And here's yet another media dismisses warning about tyranny and troops on the street as kooky conspiracy theory by Kurt Nimmo, INFOWARS.com. Chad Garrison's critique of the news that the Army is driving military vehicles through the streets of St. Louis, Missouri, is typical of the media response to this outrageous event. A local television station's coverage, quote, really ignited the crazies in the same way Orson Welles' War of the World radio broadcast did in 1938, Garrison chides. Garrison, who writes for the Riverfront Times, neglected to note that Welles' drama was pure fiction, whereas the troops on the streets of St. Louis are real. In addition to lambasting Zero Hedge and other sites covering the deployment, Garrison singled out Alex Jones, who he sarcastically states produced the video below from a basement bunker. And so basically this mainstream media hack has tried to make light of the fact that there's heavily armored tanks rolling down the streets, tried to make some sophomoric joke about it by calling us all crazies merely for reporting on it. And then he embeds the YouTube clip of Alex Jones talking about it in a video blog, and he daren't even mention his name. He calls him, quote, he calls Alex Jones, quote, an online conspiracy theorist. Well, unfortunately for you, Chad, that online conspiracy theorist has an audience about 1,000 times larger than the pointless little establishment media rag that you write for. And you know, I just love it how the mainstream media tries to marginalize the alternative media, tries to marginalize INFOWARS, when in fact we're the ones that have already marginalized them 1,000 times over by taking their readership, because we at least try to tell the truth, not just make up sophomoric rubbish like this idiot did in response to this tanks rolling down the street story. So again, Chad, Mr. Chad of Riverfront Times, with his tiny minuscule audience, is basically insulting people's intelligence by making jokes out of it all. Speaking of which, another insult on our intelligence, CNBC admits we're all slaves to a global government bank, to a global government run by bankers. Revelation of the method once again. Let's play the clip.
Now, the question is, do we all work for central bankers? That's what I want to address to our guest tonight. Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? Jim Murio, aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do? Aren't we all just counting on the fact that there's a Bernanke put and that we won't go any lower than, say, 5% down from here?
Of course we are, because if we look at the economic data, there's nothing to get excited about in that. We are absolutely slaves to central banks, because we'd love to be slaves of the economy, but the economic numbers continue to do nothing but trend low.
Yeah, and listen to what the Fed did this weekend. I think they really screwed up here. They said that we're going to do this Operation Twist through the end of the year. In other words, they're going to create uncertainty about what happens after Operation Twist, right at the same time that the fiscal cliff kicks in. Do we really want all that?
So there we have CNBC graciously revealing the truth to us all, like they've just discovered it, some big secret, even though we've known it for years. So the question is, you know, why are you seeing this on CNBC? Why are they doing it? Why is a network which is owned by Comcast and General Electric, you know, owned by the military-industrial complex itself, why are they offering us this nugget of truth? Well, it's two reasons. One is the fact that they've lied so much about the engineered global economic collapse that they risk becoming completely irrelevant. You know, I looked at the latest Nielsen figures that show virtually all of CNBC's flagship shows are bleeding viewers, Closing Bell, Squawk Box, all of it hemorrhaging viewers. I read that Squawk Box recently drew its lowest viewing figure of the year so far, which was 99,000 viewers. I mean, we make YouTube videos routinely that get double that amount of viewers, and that's their flagship show. And they're hemorrhaging viewers, people disappearing. So, you know, to avoid becoming irrelevant, to try and hold on to some of those viewers, they're trying to entice people back by sounding like Max Kaiser. They're desperate for viewers, and it's pathetic, and it shows. But the other reason is, you know, learned helplessness. They're indoctrinating people with the idea that they have no control over the situation and can't change it. And they're throwing it in your face. You know, we're ruled by a global government run by bankers. Deal with it. That's just the way it is. You know, it's the establishment announcing what they're doing to you. It's the final level of mind control where they just flagrantly come out and throw it in your face. I found a quote for Revelation of the Method, which is, when you tell someone what you're doing to them, murder, mayhem, kidnap, rape, you